Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane, and I am the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts. And I almost went right into how excited I am for Erica to be here because I was just telling her I'm a huge fan. I have been for a long time of her Wild Wynchesters, and we'll be getting all up in that in a bit. But before we get started, I just wanted to say thanks to the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programs because we couldn't do this fun stuff without them. And I'd also like to thank Erica for letting us share this program with other libraries because, of course, when libraries work together, we make magic. You can buy signed books by Erica from our favorite local indie bookstore, which is Aesop's Fable, and I'll put a link to that in a recap email I'll send to everybody after the program. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. If you have things that you want to just chat about with each other, please use the chat. It'll be open the entire hour. So, like I said, Eric has written this series called The Wild Wynchesters. And because I'm such a huge fan of that, I didn't actually know you'd written other books until I went and looked at your bio. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have such a great backlist to read. And then I learned about you and that you've traveled all over the world and you do all these amazing things like zip lining and eating couscous in Morocco. And I'm like, I have got to meet this woman. Erica, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to come.
Excellent. Well, like I said, we're delighted to have you. Um, all right. So let's get started. Lisa wants to know, are you done with your trip around the world?
I am. Yeah, we had a big trip. It was about 14 months long. I called it a sabbatical. It wasn't truly because I was editing and other things, but I didn't write any new books on the trip. But we went to 50 countries in 14 months. So it was pretty amazing. And now we are staying put for a long time.
Oh, wow. How you can accomplish anything while you're traveling the world, I don't know, but impressive. So we do have another question in the chat, but I will get to those in just a minute because I want to ask you a little bit about yourself and either your most recent book or the book that's coming out in 2 weeks. So tell us about yourself. Like, who are you? Where'd you come from? I don't know, like you appeared on the scene and we were all like, oh my God, Erica Ridley. How did that happen?
I am originally from the United States, and I've lived in several different places there before I started moving around. And then I moved here to Costa Rica about 15 years ago. I really do love to travel. I have been fortunate enough to work for myself most of my adult life. First, I was in like websites and software development before I made the switch to becoming a writer. So in both cases, I've kind of been able to travel without taking vacation, which is
Mhm.
definitely a luxury. Um, and I always wanted to be a writer ever since I was very, very small. And my parents tried to encourage me to do something that had a salary. And so I didn't originally go for that, hence the IT job that I had previously. But I always loved it, and I never gave up on that. And I remembered all the spiral notebooks I used to fill and all the blisters I would get on my hands from just writing all my stories as I was a child. And so then I finally gave myself a goal of just trying to see if I could write a full-length book, because that's a challenge, right? I knew a lot of people who said they wanted to write a book one day and just like never did it. So that was the first question in the air. And then just kept giving myself challenges. And then the next thing, I knew I had an agent, and then I had my first contract, and then I had my first book and my first book launch party, and it was amazing. And it has been amazing ever since. It never gets old. It's always so fun and so surreal to have a new book come out into the world, and so fun to share stories that have existed just in my imagination with other people.
But of all of the genres that are out there, why romance? What drew you to writing romance? Were you reading it? Did you have somebody who was an inspiration?
Yeah, so originally, actually, I wasn't going to write romance. I had always dreamed as a child of being a horror writer. So, a little different. And, but then, like, when I was actually trying to be a professional writer, when I was considering that possibility, like, two different things happened. Before that, I had been introduced to the romance genre by an author named Joanna Lindsay. I stumbled over one of her books and was hooked. It was over.
Hmm.
So I immediately started binging. all of those, all the Garwoods, all the everybody that was big at that time, Judith McNaught and everybody. And so I definitely had a predilection for romance novels. But then also one of the only romance organizations open to unpublished authors was the Romance Writers of America.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured if I wanted to learn about how to be a writer, I needed to join a professional organization that could tell me the things that I didn't know I didn't know. I wouldn't even know what to Google. And in fact, it was invaluable being a part of that community. I definitely credit that for getting me started down the right path. So a combination of loving romance and it just literally being the biggest community open to people joining.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say I loved those the classics. They were a bit of bodice rippers, right? Like Joanna Lindsay, my favorite book is Defy Not the Heart. I still remember the cover with Fabio on it. She was Lisa's neighbor in Hawaii, I believe. Is that right, Lisa? Lisa's in my romance book club. And Julie Garwood, you cannot go wrong. I've loved
Oh, you cannot go wrong.
no,
Every book is a winner.
every
Amazing.
book. Well, her more contemporary ones, they're okay.
But
But
every historical, her
every
historicals, I
historical.
was a huge
Yeah. I
fan of.
mean, oh my God, The Bride, The Secret, The Prize. I mean, just on and on. So I love that. Um and we were talking before we got started, we were talking about the rise of horror romance. And now that you're saying that, I'm like, is this something that you would do?
Well, sort of. So my first young adult book just came out last month, and it's called The Protege, and one could argue it is in fact a horror romance. So it is marketed as a horror novel or a thriller, but it definitely has a romance plot. So if you're in it for the romance, you won't be disappointed there either. So we'll see what the future holds.
Okay, all right. We will look for that. Let's talk about the Winchesters though, because for me, they were my gateway to you. What gave you this idea for this family, this found family?
Yeah, so I just really wanted to have kind of how do I explain myself? So, kind of like superheroes without powers,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. I wanted them to each have their own talents. I wanted them to be a found family to kind of show that the bond can be just as strong when you choose who your people are, as opposed to just, those who you're born to. Um, and I really love heists. So there's always heists and shenanigans in every book. And one of the fun parts of ice, if you like capers and things like that, it is always kind of the montage of everybody's skills, and you've got the safe cracker and the pickpocketer, like whatever the thing is. And so it was very fun for me to kind of build this team of people, not just with different skills, but different personalities. So sometimes they get along really great, and sometimes, they butt heads because I wanted them to also be a family. I wanted to show that working together does mean work sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I just love I love adventure. I love banter. I love ridiculousness. And so having kind of a big group like that let me play out a lot of different scenarios. So when I wrote the first book, The Duke Heist, I definitely had all the other kind of future characters in mind. I didn't know their exact plot arc for the future books, but I did know kind of where I wanted each sibling to how I wanted them to develop. And so that was a lot of fun to be able to incorporate them into each different book of the series as it went along.
Mm-hmm. So I find that your description of your books is really interesting because it was also the same description in your bio, not the bio, the like the about the books.
Mhm.
They're lighthearted, they're witty, they feel good, whatever. But I found they are all of that. Historical rom-coms, love it. But they're also like really they've all got like really incredible messages about self-acceptance and caring about each other, loyalty. I mean, so much. So how did you do that? Like, what was your thinking around like each character having a skill and then and just being really like, or some well, deficiency, I'll say, it's not the right word, but some challenge that
Sure.
that they could actually use to be part of something.
Yeah, so I definitely thought of them as kind of becoming more whole when they found each other. And then, of course, also when they find their love interest, which begs the question, like, what is the wound? What is the problem? What is the challenge, that they're dealing with before, which, as you mentioned, often becomes kind of the theme of that specific book. I don't necessarily, when I'm writing the first draft, have that kind of theme in mind. Sometimes it comes out organically based on the characters and the plot that they find themselves in. But yeah, I do feel very strongly personally about themes of self-acceptance and, empathy and, loyalty and all these other things. And so it often, I think, comes into play in my stories.
Hmm. So I'm reading the book that's coming up. I told you I'm not going to remember titles because I'm like
A
a
Waltz on
loser.
the Wild Side.
Yes. And the main character in that, not a spoiler, has physical issues. Like traveling is difficult for her, right?
Oh, okay. So you're reading Hot Earl Summer.
Yes, I'm
That's the
reading
most
Hot Girl
recent
Summer.
one.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes. Yeah.
I have the next one on my Kindle. I'm sorry. I'm reading Hot Earl Summer. Um, and she has physical issues that keep her from
Yes.
traveling, but yet she still does it. And I'm for everybody who knows me, I love the Fourth Wing series, and the main character has physical problems that keeps her that she shouldn't be able to travel, but yet she always does, and she does these incredible things, and you're just like, but she's not supposed to be able to do those. Your character actually really, really struggles.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. She very much struggles like over the course of the whole series. If you've read any of the other books that Elizabeth is a part of, it is definitely a part not just of her personality, but of just her reality. There are things that she either can't do or that it just depends. There's good days and there's bad days, and on her good days, she's just amazing. I, is this a swear-free zone?
No, go ahead,
I,
do
I
it.
was I was going to use the word badass, but I didn't want
No,
to
that's completely
ruffle
fine.
feathers. Okay.
We're all adults here.
So on a good day, she's a total badass, and then on a bad day, it's just a bed, that's she can't get out of that. And I just kind of wanted to show that reality because I personally struggle with some physical issues that are not apparent just looking at me, but I also have had days or weeks where I can't move, and it can be difficult when someone externally can't see that there's quote unquote something wrong with you. But you are dealing with that certain thing. And of course you want to be strong, you want to be competent, you want to be, whatever it is that you dream of being. And Elizabeth and I don't have the same physical limitations, but I wanted to imbue her character with some of those frustrations and triumphs from when you do manage to do the thing and to achieve and be part of the team and to win the day and all that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, I definitely wanted to show it. I didn't want to just pay lip service to it and say, sometimes, whatever, but not show any of that part would kind of take away from who she is and what it means when she does win. It
Hmm.
it means less if you don't see the struggle as well.
Hmm. But that part of it, I really liked when she didn't necessarily accomplish what she wanted because her
Hmm.
family was so accepting of her. They
Yeah,
just were like, "That's Elizabeth. We'll just go to Plan C."
yeah, yeah. And I think that's important too, that there's not judgments, because it's not a personal failing. It's just your reality.
Hmm. Yeah, and your again, titles escape me in the chat. Let me know which one it was. Was the FF book?
Oh, The Perks of Loving a Wallflower.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Um, so somebody wants to know: are you planning on writing more queer historical romances?
Yeah, I would love to actually. I did write a couple others. I have Her Princess at Midnight, so that's another FF, and I have Undressing the Duke, so that one's MM. And those are the ones that I have so far, but I would definitely love to write more in the future.
Mhm. And going back to the series of the Winchesters, um, each one of them have like you had one that where there was a queer couple. There was one with the physical ailments. There was one like they all have their different things. Did you when you went into it, did you think, okay, these are the things I want to sort of like cover, or was it more organic?
Well, definitely when I was brainstorming the series originally, when when I was writing the very first book, I did kind of think to myself, well, what kind of things do I want to touch on or display or explore? So some of that was in place before, from the very beginning, from page one. But then other things, as the series progressed and the family meets more people in their world, did change organically from there.
Mhm. Oh, good. So do you write, are you a pantser? You get an idea and you just start writing?
I'm definitely a plotter. I'm team plot. I love the act of plotting. I will not say that the book I end up writing 100% follows the plot that I have created for it, but I must have one. It is part of my process. Just mentally, I need to know that there is a path to get me from page one to the end, and then I can sit down and write the book, even if it makes deviations along the way. I'm okay with that. But sitting down with absolutely no idea what's coming next is a little bit scary for me.
Okay. So do you have like a spreadsheet of who's going to do what when? I mean, how detailed do you get?
Yeah, so I used to do spreadsheets. Actually, I first started with colored post-its covering my walls. I would make different colors for different people or different plot lines, and I would do it like that and move things around. Now I have an app I use called Scrivener, which basically does the same thing, and I can take it with me. It's electronic now, so that's very nice. Um, so I just do it that way now. But it was fun having, the stalker wall of post-its and other notes.
I always enjoy hearing and seeing that from authors. Um, so let's get a little bit into some writing. Sam asks, why do you think historical romance is very limited in terms of representation? There seems to be an uptick in diversity, which you've been an integral part of. Why do you think people don't necessarily see marginalized identities as part of history?
Hmm. Well, that is a complicated question. Um, Certainly, people from the marginalized communities definitely see themselves as a part of history. I think part of the problem has been structural with publishing and with what the publishing industry and the book selling industry felt that they could sell, which for the longest time, to just be fully transparent, was focused very much on just your majority white Christian reader. Um, and so that colored a lot of it and became kind of tradition in a way. I think for a long time people didn't question it. And I love that recently that has definitely been changing. I think the internet has been huge with that. Ebooks, self-publishing has definitely proven that there are markets beyond what history kind of would have told the publishing industry were the safe markets to play in. So I think it is changing now. I don't know if it's changing at the speed that we would like it to, but I definitely think that the market is getting wider and more identities are being represented, and more people that perhaps don't share the marginalized identities are becoming aware of everything that they didn't know was out there, or the stories that they didn't even know they could be told. And I hope that that desire to experience new worlds will keep making the pie bigger for everybody.
Hmm. You would hope, but as a follow up to that question, your first book came out in 2010. Is that about right? Um,
That is correct, yes.
yes. So was that the beginning phase of when publishers were starting to look for more diverse stories? Do you think? Um,
I don't know if they were. I was unaware of it at that time. I at that time definitely felt that in order to be published, I needed to write straight white people,
mhm,
which was my first book, that my debut book. Um, and I definitely felt that that was going to be the way forward then. And slowly things did change. Um, but I don't think it was everyone, and I don't think it was highly publicized. And I do feel that most publishers weren't really promoting that they were looking for diversity in their authors or the stories, because there was also, as you probably recall, a lot of that where there was people who were not of the marginalized identities writing about groups that they didn't know a lot about, and so there was some scandals there. With some notable exceptions, there were some lines, yeah, Harlequin and Kensington Come to Line, that had whole lines dedicated to let's say like Black love or whatever. Um, and I think that helped pave the way as well. I mean, there's some arguments for and against having that kind of categorization, but it did make a stepping stone.
Mhm. Well, I guess that's why I think that the descriptions of your books can be a little bit deceiving to the reader because they seem like they're going to be so lighthearted, and yet they tackle such deep and interesting topics that weren't really seen before. And so, yes, your characters might have been white, at the early hetero, whatever, but you've always put in something that is going to resonate with a particular reader.
Yeah, I've tried to, yeah. And it's interesting that you say that as well, because I've read some reviews that do only mention those aspects that you have just said. And it almost sounds like it's a different book then.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like the battle of the reviews, one person is like, oh, it was so funny and this and that. And the other person was like, it talked about being abandoned and violence and autism, or whatever. And like, um, it's it's just interesting. I don't know. I guess I feel like those two things have no reason not to coexist. You
Mhm.
can have lightheartedness and banter and serious things happen to you all at the same time.
Mhm. And you do it so well. Like I laugh at your books, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe that just happened. Like, or I can't believe they got together. Or and you bring us along for the ride, which is really amazing. And I love that you like that this can be put together because a lot of people think it has to be one thing or the other. Um,
Yeah.
and do you think that part of it is a reader perception? Like we get out of it what our own experience is, so that that's what we put in our reviews is like our own background and history kind of informs
For
that.
sure, that's definitely a factor. I remember the first reader event I ever went to after my debut books, when I only had one book out. And it was the kind of reader event where there was like a lunch or a tea or something like that. And so there's one author at each table, and the readers got to pick which author they were going to sit at their table with. And at my table, there were two readers who were arguing about the book. They had each interpreted things different ways, and they wanted me to settle the argument, and I could not, because you can't help but come to any book from the perspective of your own lived experience.
Mhm.
And how it felt to you is how it felt to you. It's valid either way.
Mhm.
So yeah, I tried not to, but because what I meant doesn't always matter at that point. Like once it's on the shelf, like it's your book now. It's your story.
Right. And well, I mean, in the sense that like you're not going to go back and change things because somebody wrote to you and said, "Oh, that didn't work for me," or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't, there's nothing I can do now.
Right. And the majority of people, are gonna. I don't know. I think that people love your books. So the Waltz on the Wild Side is coming out in 2 weeks. It's the next book in the Wild Wynchesters. And Rachel would like to know if you're going to be doing any big signings, which had talked about right before we started.
I I will be going to the States during the week of the book launch. I will be in the Seattle area. I don't know where you are located, everybody that's in the chat. But I will post online. I will post on socials and in my newsletter for any signings that I do to let you guys know.
Hmm.
But several bookstores, like the one Aesop's and others, also are able to have signed copies or signed book plates if you would like that as well.
Hmm. I know. I just think signed books are gold. Like I have this whole shelf in my office with just signed books, and I just like sit there and stare at it every now and then. It's very weird. Okay. And now I have a question from Beth, who's also in my romance book club, going back to the beginning for you. What was the revision process like for your first book? Like time from querying to landing an agent? How was that process for you?
Yeah, um, so in the very beginning, I had written my first book that I got my agent with is not the first book that sold.
Oh.
So I had written a contemporary rom-com, like a fantasy rom-com. Um, about an aspiring tooth fairy, and much shenanigans ensued. She didn't actually have magic and was chaotic. It was great. But publishers not interested in that. But it was one of, like when I said I would set myself little goals, so one of the goals that I had set for myself was whether I could get an agent. And so then I investigated first. I made like lists of what agencies did I think I might be a good fit for, and then which specific agents there. And I tried to be strategic about that. Like I wasn't going to pick the owner of the agency because they were probably had an established client base or whatever. And so I queried. My strategy at the time was querying more junior agents at established rockstar agencies. And that is eventually what paid off. And so I have been with the same agent my whole time. So I'm with Lauren Abramo of Tissot and Goderich. And I was one of her first clients. So we were just little babies together all those years ago. And and so then she tried to sell that first manuscript and it did not. And it took like a year. I mean, publishing is very, very slow. For those of you who don't know, it is not a fast thing. So it took about a year for all the no's to finally roll in. And then the next thing I gave her was a historical romance, a Gothic historical romance, Too Wicked to Kiss. And then that one is the one that sold. So it's not always a straightforward process. There were many rejections to queries before I got an agent, and there was all 100% rejections of the first manuscript before the second book sold. And you just have to have kind of not just thick skin, but a lot of patience to be an author.
One of the questions related to that comes up a lot in my discussions is about debut authors and the quality of their work. Because, your first book is probably very different writing and everything than the current books. So how can we make sure that debut authors aren't put to the side by readers because their first book didn't get the shine it needed from the people that should be editing and putting on the best covers and blah, blah, blah?
I mean, that's a good question, and I'm not sure how to answer it because I'm not sure it's always clear to readers that what they're reading is a debut book. Um,
Mm. Hmm.
so I mean, I don't know how you would convey nuance really with a given book. And it's kind of a tough question anyway, because I would like to believe that I improve with every book that I write, although I am certain that my readers would say, some books hit more than other books, because that's how it always is.
Hmm.
You and I were just chatting about authors we loved who they had some books that we loved more than other books, and that's just what life is. And so how would you judge that as well? Like it's hard. You don't know what the author was going through. Maybe they were having a tough pregnancy when they were written their 11th book or whatever, and it hits differently. I think it's maybe too much to ask a reader to take that into consideration. The debut author's debutness, if they don't know, but rather try to look for what they do vibe with the author. Like if
Hmm.
this book wasn't perfect, but you really love the humor or the pacing or whatever, the dialogue, the sexual tension, whatever it is that got it for you, then try another book by them. Try the next one
Hmm.
would be more of my advice.
Okay. Yeah, like so I was gonna say that your question about how do we know it's a debut is really interesting because I think that we, uh, as a romance reader myself, I will read everything by an author that I like. So I know that if it's your 12th book and you are having a bad, pregnancy or something like that, I'm more forgiving because I know you already. I feel like I know you already, right? I have a little
Right,
dedication or loyalty to you. Whereas a debut author or somebody I haven't read before, I'm more likely to put it aside because I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about that person. So,
right.
but that's neither here nor there. It's just something that we've been talking about. Um, this question also comes up very frequently. We keep hearing that historical romance is dying or dead. What do you think? It seems like there are many of us dedicated to historical romance readers that aren't slowing down in our consumption, and yet we keep being told that these kind of books aren't valuable anymore by
Yeah,
publishers.
yeah. Well, it is true that publishers right now have definitely slowed down publishing historical romance. However, I have been told from the moment I first started in this industry that historical romance was dead or dying. It has yet to do that. It seems very cyclical. And I will say that I've also noticed, like in publishers' marketplace, I don't know how familiar readers are with that, but that's a place where you can kind of see what publishers are buying. And right now, the trend, there has been a lot of publishers picking up different genres of authors who maybe their series had previously been self-published and now it's going to be traditionally
Mhm.
published or whatever. And so I think when the trend, when the wave comes back, it may come back with indie published books first, and then publishers will get back on the wave and surf with it for a while. I never ever ever think that it's going to die. I think that's false advertising. I think that it's just going to be, waves. It's going to crest and then mellow and then crest again. And I don't know how long it's going to be until the next crest, but I have no doubt that it's coming.
Mhm. Yeah, because us readers aren't going away. There's new ones every day, new ones born every day.
Yeah.
And with is that been affected too by self-publishing? As you said, the indies some of them are being picked up by traditional publishers, but some of them are not, and they're still doing really, really well. And I know some self-published authors who won't go trad because they make
Oh,
more
yeah.
money
Sure,
as
sure.
a.
There's many who have no interest ever in going trad. So, um, but it doesn't mean I mean, I do think indie publishing is so much more nimble. It moves so
Mhm,
much faster than traditional publishing that they are able to jump on trends well ahead of the curve. And so it can feel like traditional publishing is kind of a little bit behind sometimes with that.
mhm,
And so that's why I said like I wouldn't be surprised if we see the next wave coming from indie first
mhm.
before trad gets behind it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think readers also are very nimble. We're always looking for something shiny.
yeah.
So now we have a question about what inspired the 12 Dukes of Christmas. I would like to know this as well.
I thought that um, I thought it would be fun. I had written some holiday books before, and I thought it would be fun to kind of have like a semi-fantasy Regency town. I mean, there isn't really a town that's Christmas all year long in England, um, and to kind of and not just explore your usual holiday tropes, but also the idea of, what would that town look like when it's not Christmas time, and how does that kind of Christmas spirit come about, and what kind of people would be there in that town. And I just had a lot of fun running with it. One of the things, kind of an inside joke for myself and anyone who picked up on it, is obviously the 12 Dukes of Christmas sounds like the 12 days of Christmas. And so in each book has plot point related to the song. So the first book has a partridge in a pear tree and like so on. And so sometimes I had to go to ridiculous levels to make those things come to pass. But it just made it all the more fun to me to just really go there all in it to win it, and just have a lot of fun with
Mhm.
holiday tropes.
I love that. Um, okay. This is a really good question too because I love your covers, but I've noticed a change over time of like real people versus that more cartoony character. So why do you think of the change in the covers, like going from the real people to on covers to the cartoon covers? Do they convey what you want, and why are we seeing this trend, do you think?
I well, I didn't have any control over that. That happened halfway through my Winchester series. First, just the trade paperback, the larger size, had the illustrated covers, and the mass market still had real people. And then on the last book, the one you're reading, Hot Earl Summer, both now have illustrated covers. I mean, that's very much a publisher decision. I was not consulted on what should be done with that kind of way. So, like, does it convey what I personally would wish? I'm partial to the real people covers. I think the illustrated covers are cute, but I think it's maybe so trendy now that it's hard to detect. Once upon a time, if you saw an illustrated cover, you knew what kind of book it was.
Hmm.
And now you don't necessarily, because so many, even, mysteries, romance, you can't really tell what kind of book it is, or even just women's fiction. Maybe there's not even a happy ending for the romantic couple, and it's not as clear when you look at it what kind of book it is. And so I do think there's some danger there. That being said, I'm apparently becoming an old school reader, and the younger generations find clinch covers cringe. And so, if you do want to introduce historical romance, particularly to new audiences, then I guess it is important to kind of meet them where they are as well. So, I just think there's some there's pros and cons, right, of going either way, and of course, there's always going to be both sides who love one more than the other. And unfortunately, I don't have the data that a big publishing house has, so I don't actually know if one way sells better than the other way, or if it's just indie. But I would hope that they are making database decisions. I don't know if they are, but I would hope.
I do wonder how those younger readers would think of step backs. Oh, Rachel's right with me. I was a big
Yeah.
fan of step backs.
I love step backs. Also, can I just say I loved the funky cutouts in the VC Andrews books to those step backs. Like I lived for that.
So iconic, right? Or you knew Johanna Lindsay. Some of her covers were
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
love them, love them. I loved them. I mean, I know they would not age well, all of that, but I have a very special place in my heart for them.
I did ask my editor if I could have one, and she was like, "No."
That would be so cool though. Like, especially if they're illustrated, they could continue the illustration inside. Which
It
brings me
was my dream.
back. Well, you were talking earlier about your very first book that didn't get picked up. Would you ever consider indie publishing it?
I would and I did. And so yeah, it is called Must Love Magic, and it's part of a little trilogy of fantasy rom-coms.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, many years later, the audiobook sold to a traditional publisher, and my agent and I had, you know, we shared a smile over that. She said, "I knew I was right about that book."
I love it. Which actually brings me to a question in the Q&A. How did you transition from writing magic and mayhem to the Gothic love series? It's a pretty big tonal switch.
It was a big tonal switch, and I did it back to back. I wrote those in the same year. Wrote the Tooth Fairy book and then the Too Wicked to Kiss first in the Gothic. Um, I don't know. I guess for me, I just really love immersing myself in a world. Like so, to me, when I was a kid and I wanted to write horror, or when I wrote just a fantasy world that I got to make up myself, or even when it's Regency England, I just love being somewhere else and trying to convey a story that takes place there. So even though it's a huge tonal shift, like for me, it's still the same kind of like travel, vacation. We get to go somewhere else and visit this new place.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'm just looking at your backlist and thinking like you've really moved around a lot. I mean, like you went from like the Magic and Mayhem to the Dukes of War to the current Winchesters, but also like you just said you had a YA book out. So
Yeah.
is it because you get bored?
Oh, I would love to write so many different things. For the longest time, I did not deviate from historical romance because the conventional wisdom at the time was that you picked a lane and you stayed in it.
Mm,
But I do love so many different genres. As a reader, I'm a voracious reader. I don't just read one thing. I mean, I read not just all the romance genres, but I also love horror, mystery, whatever, thrillers. I'll read just about anything. Fiction is my favorite. Um, and that's kind of reflected in what I would like to write as well. Whether I can get published in all those genres is a completely different thing. I mean, obviously, independent publishing exists, but it gets exponentially harder to kind of have all those different branches out there. It's hard to be an expert in all the things as one person.
mhm.
So I don't know that I will get to try all the things in the way that I would like to have my little writer buffet of genres, but I'm doing my best.
I think you're doing great. Nancy has a great question about how do you balance the amount of romance in a historical romance novel and history in your historical romance novel. Like, what seems the right amount to you? How do you gauge that?
So I would say it's more per book than just a general yardstick that I am doing. So some of my series I would say are more history based than other ones. Um, like the 12 Dukes of Christmas, like I said, is not a real town, and that one does have some real history, but it's not as based in the real things that were happening at the time as other stories like the Wild Wynchesters, where they will reference laws that were passed in Parliament or, riots that were happening in the streets because it's very much of its time and place. So I guess my first thing would just be, well, what kind of series is this? Like, is this a more actual real history series, or is this more of a fun and vibes series? And then kind of go from there.
Hmm. Virginia asks, do you think that the Bridgerton TV series has had an impact on diversity in romance?
I will say that it did not have the impact that many of us were hoping that it would have. I really hoped that it was going to cause a huge boom, and not just for series like the Wild Winchesters, which are diverse on the page, but many other series. I mean, I have a lot of writer friends that are writing lots of diverse series now, and I didn't feel like it really made the big splash that we were all hoping. And I'm not sure what happened because the series was and is still a huge hit. And I don't know if it's because that audience is pretty much just an audiovisual audience, if it's not translating. Although the Bridgerton series has been at the top of the list pretty much ever since the show came out. So I'm not sure what went wrong, so to speak. Um, but
Uh, I think it goes back to that loyalty. Like Julia Quinn now has this huge, huge following, but that doesn't necessarily like when 50 Shades of Grey came out. Some people read some other romances, but it wasn't like as you like it wasn't this big juggernaut in terms of the genre that we expected as well. Um,
yeah.
I think it's because we're sheep. We're all like, oh, everybody's watching Bridgerton. Let's watch Bridgerton. But I think it's a matter of loyalty. I think like people are very, very loyal to the authors that they read. And
Yeah.
it's a good thing. So the sheep comment was completely an aside. Um, you mentioned that you read a lot of other genres and in romance. Who are your favorite writers writing the same thing, the historical romance right now?
Oh man. Oh, I always hate the what are my favorites questions. Can I come back to it? I'm
Yes.
always scared that I'm gonna leave out or let's come back to
Okay, yeah. Put them some thought into that. I should have told you before that I was going to ask the question.
it.
Um, have you? Karen asked this in the chat a while ago, and I want to get back to it. She asked about your writing process, and I know you talked about being a plotter, but have you noticed that your writing process has changed from the time you started to now?
Sure. Well, I actually learned to be a plotter. Definitely my first attempts at writing, well, for sure as a kid, I didn't know any different. But even when I first started trying to be a professional writer, just kind of sat down and wrote whatever occurred to me. And that was so much fun. I won't lie, best fun ever, but doesn't necessarily set you up or me personally up to have the most coherent story or the best pacing or the best arc at the end. And so then I learned for me, it was more time efficient to kind of hash out some of that stuff before I got started rather than write 400 pages and then have to go back and edit them all, throw them all away. I have friends who are very, very successful. They're best-selling authors and they regularly have to delete 100, 200 pages of their first draft because they didn't know where they were going and it didn't work by the time they did figure it out. And that's kind of my fear is to spend months writing and then just delete. So I learned kind of how to be a plotter. But like I said, I'm not married to my plot. I need to know that there is a way through that makes sense and would be satisfying. But if I think of something better along the way, I have no problems taking the side roads.
I love it. I can't imagine that. But do you think it's easier for you to have a publisher because you do plot? Because I've heard that most publishers do want like some sort of synopsis of what the book is going to be, and so people who are pantsers tend to not be able to do that as successfully.
So I will definitely say for a debut author, you absolutely will. in most cases would need to have the complete manuscript first. The publisher
Mhm.
will not sign you on vibes. But the more established you are, they will. Um, I did not have much when I sold the Wild Winchester series or the YA. It was kind of, a couple chapters and a little synopsis that really nobody was married to. But kind of publishers, kind of like what I'm saying, they just want to know there is a way to the end. Like you have a plan. It's
Mhm.
not like there's an author who I won't name who was very famous for writing these thrillers that had these amazing setups, but it very much read like she pantsed it because by the time you got to the end, it was kind of a little bit Scooby-Doo ending. Do you know what I mean? And this is all that worked out, and they just want to make sure that you can have a satisfying ending. I have never once been criticized or even questioned about not following a synopsis that I turned in at the beginning when I said the story was going to be this way, and then it wasn't. That no one has ever said anything to me about it.
Mhm.
So I think as long as the finished product is something readers will enjoy, I think it's okay if you don't know whether you're a plotter or a pantser, if you don't 100% know in the beginning. But yeah, a traditional publisher will want to know that you can think of an ending and
Mhm.
an arc that makes sense.
Mhm. And are they looking for concepts that maybe haven't been done before? Because, like, we talk about tropes a lot. There almost every romance book has tropes in it. It's the journey of how you use that trope that tells a story. So, are they looking, do you think, for anything unique or different within those tropes?
Sure. I think there's kind of two schools of thought there that they both like. One is the famous catchphrase of high concept. So they want you to say, theme park, but dinosaurs, right? Like that had never been done before, but you get it. You know what dinosaurs are, you know what a theme park is. And so when someone throws out Jurassic Park, you're like, oh, okay, that sounds crazy. I want it. And so that's a thing. And then there's also the other one, the other old standby is same but different. So if you think of shows like Law and Order, hugely popular, but
Hmm.
you would be hard pressed to say that the episodes are wildly different from each other. It's the same but different every single time, but that's what keeps the viewers coming back. And so it can be the same for any given genre as well. Like a cozy mystery. Like you can probably just think off the top of your head, like what the tropes are, what the general setup is for that. But that doesn't mean anything bad. It just, there's two different ways that you can approach trying to get a traditional publishing deal. I would say doing same but different very well, just nailing it, knowing what the readers want and doing that thing amazingly. Or you can try the high concept thing that what has never been done before. But then once again, that has to be very well executed because they won't always know how to sell it. Whereas if you go same but different, they know exactly how to sell
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Um, but the high concept can be splashier, so you might get more promo. I mean, it's always a crapshoot. Impossible
Yeah.
to say.
And I think, as you were saying, for the same but different, for me, it's a comfort to know kind of what I'm getting into. I'm a huge rereader. I love to reread because I know exactly what's going to happen. I don't, and I just know the writing's going to make me feel good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely like Garwoods, as we said. I reread those books so many times, countless times, and it is a comfort thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't know if people know this, but I only listen to books I've already read, so that because I love to reread and I don't always have time, that way I can enjoy the performance of it because I know the story. It's a great way to reread if anybody likes doing it. So Chandler says, I'm currently reading Nobody's Princess. I love it. What
Yay!
is it like writing and researching for Black characters in a setting like Regency Europe?
Yeah, so obviously there is less reference material, but there is not an absence of. So I bought, several books, um, reference books about, Black people in Regency England specifically, which there have been Black people in England for
Mhm.
centuries. It was not like a new thing. But learning about those communities, like where they were, how did they integrate or not, and things like that. Also, I try to find contemporaneous references, so meaning things that were written at that time period, not just like modern day scholars. And then another thing that I love is when I can find exhibits in museums, whether I can go in person or whether they've got online things where I can see whether it's extracts from letters or clothing or, just things he would have used for beauty or day to day and that kind of thing, to be able to use those kinds of details as well. But I would definitely say for any kind of marginalized community in an area where the stories have been predominantly white, it does take more effort.
Mhm.
Because if you just pick up a book on what was Regency England like, you're going to get a lot of, dukes and earls, and not even just your regular working class people, which was the majority of people, regardless of any other minority aspect.
Yeah. Um, I am going to ask this question by Beth, which is controversial. She says it's controversial, and I agree because I'm going to have a little talk with her at our next romance book club about it. What are your thoughts about endings without the couple getting together, keeping it open ended? Does this go against romance book rules? And I'm going to have to like,
Okay, so my opinion is that the couple has to be together at the end for it to be a romance. Yes. I think it can be a love story, which is not the same thing, and be about a relationship where they don't necessarily stay together at the end. I do not think they have to be married with babies or anything like that. I'm team happy for now. I think that's valid. But still together at the end, I would say, is the one and only rule, in my opinion, of what is a romance novel.
hmm. So we had this conversation recently. I don't think Beth was there about this, and most of the people in the book club thought happily for now is fine. But I was a huge advocate for that. It has to convince me that they're going to be together forever. It has to convince me that they've dealt with their issues well enough so that they might not be married, they might never have children, but that they have a commitment to each other that they're going to be together for the rest of their life. So that's me. I don't know if anybody in the audience wants to like put in the chat like how they feel about it because we did not come to fisticuffs, but it was close.
Well, I will say that when I said happy for now, I do mean that it looks like it's working. I don't mean like they're still frenemies and putting up with each other. Like I definitely mean that it looks like they have a long HEA ahead of them. I just don't necessarily think, and I say this as someone who writes historical romance, which has traditionally been a wedding and babies in the epilogue genre. And I don't always do that. I don't even generally do that. And so that's why I'm a little defensive there. I think they can have an HEA without necessarily having that cherry on top. And I know that's controversial in my specific genre. There's lots of historical readers who do feel there has to be vows taking place or
Well,
babies.
because oh yeah, the timing maybe, but I'm going to keep this chat because a lot of people are with me. with they have to be happily ever after forever. Um, Actually, I really love. This is not Regency romance, but have you read J.R. Ward? She
Uh,
writes paranormal.
yeah, yeah, like Black Dagger
Yeah,
Brotherhood and
yeah.
yeah,
So she often revisits with characters who are having issues, like they had a happily ever after. We knew they were going to be together, and then late in later books, you see them struggling with life issues as life is in a relationship. And I love that because I think that that makes it more real to how a real couple would struggle with being in a relationship.
sure.
And we don't always get that because people don't have long enough series or
Long enough series, yeah, to
right?
look back on.
Yeah, because sometimes like they're you don't do this, but like a lot of times the characters from past books are sort of like walk on, walk off. You see them, you're like,
Right.
oh, that's blah blah blah, and then they walk back off. But to give them some sort of meat in a later book is I think very realistic to life.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to that really hard question
Oh
about
no.
authors
I
that
did not have
you.
a chance to think of it. Can
Oh
I send you a list that because you said you're going to send out an
yes,
email, right? To
yeah.
everybody? I will send you a list.
Okay. Well, you don't have to. I don't need it, but if you want to, that would be completely fine. But what now? This book is your next book is coming out next week. Is it? It's not the final book. I know there's siblings
It
left.
is the final book. A
No
Waltz on the Wild Side is
way.
the final Winchester's book.
Why
Yeah.
did I think there's more? Maybe because I'll be sad. I really thought there was an wait. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to look back on this and say, no, I don't get it. How's that possible? It's the last one.
It's the
Rachel,
last
it's
one
the
already.
last one. That's it. But now I need more. I need more. I love the Wild Wynchesters.
I will
Okay.
miss them very much. I had a lot of fun writing this series.
All right. Then what is up after the Winchesters? Lisa asked. We will allow it.
Well, for right now, I am currently working on my second YA. It is called Insatiable. It'll come out next year. It is very different. So, much like the other YA, is also a horror slash thriller. And I don't currently have another romance contract underway, so I don't have anything I can talk about at this time. But as soon as I have a new series in the works, I will definitely make sure everybody finds out.
Okay. Well, are there any of your characters in past series that you would go revisit while you're waiting for that next contract? Rachel says she was lucky enough to read an arc and didn't realize that it was going to be the last one either. So I'm not feeling so bad. I was just like, where's this coming from? But yeah, so like you know how sometimes you'll get reader recommendations or like requests for characters in past books. If you were to pick a character from a past book to write about, who would that be?
I would have to think about it. I mean, that does happen. I did end up writing an additional book in the Rogues to Riches series because the Duke of Lamley was a reader favorite and he did not get his HEA during the original six books, and so now there is a seventh book there. So never say never. I could go back to just about anything. Um, I don't want to promise anything because there's nothing that I definitely have in the works right now from a past series. But if you have strong feelings, feel free to let me know, and I will take it under advisement because after, as I have just said, I have before done as you suggested and written another book in a previous series.
You heard that, everybody. Make your recommendations because I'm feeling like I need more Winchesters. There is something definitely wrong with me that I did not catch that. Seven siblings? That's not right.
But there's six siblings.
Okay. So we did get an extra, everybody. A junior team Winchester book. That would be funny. Um,
Winchesters, the next generation.
yeah, we could like watch it like next to Star Trek or something. The next. Yeah, obviously we'll read whatever you write, Erica. So it does, I'll be sad about the Winchesters, but I'll pick up something from your backlist. I'm actually really interested in the 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 Dukes of War series. That was just amazing. And
That
now
was
that
my breakout series. That was the series that made me realize that I could do this, that it could be my career. So that was an exciting series for me.
was that scary for you? Because I know we just have a couple more minutes, but I wanted to ask about you were a software engineer. We talked about this before. To say, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to write.
Yeah, it was very scary. And I did have to I had my own company at that time, and I gave up all but like three of my core clients so that I could dedicate my time to writing. And spoiler, you don't make a lot of money on book one. No one has ever heard of you. So, it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. But over the course of the Dukes of War book, I went from an unknown to a New York Times bestseller, and it was just a wild ride. So yeah, it was awesome.
I remember we were talking about romance community before, is that people or other authors were talking about you. I definitely heard about you from other historical, not even historical romance writers, like Susan Elizabeth Phillips, Kristen Higgins, like all these authors that I was reading were like, read Erica Ridley. And I was like, okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we were talking about like how the romance community can be really supportive of each other.
Yeah.
One last question from Virginia. Um, would you write a novella to revisit old characters that to create a happy HEA, or this is my part of the question? would you put it in your newsletter, like a little snippet so we can see them again?
Oh yeah, I've definitely done that. I've written several second epilogues and things like that. I'm very open to that kind of thing.
Okay, everyone, sign up for our newsletter. Erica, thank you so much for doing this. This has been really, really fun, and the audience has been fantastic. I really appreciate you all. And
Thank you
so
so much
we
for having me. It's been great. I've loved chatting with everyone.
excellent. And look out for the new book coming out in 2 weeks, and make sure you grab it from your local bookseller or from Aesop's Fable if you are going to be ordering it, and of course from your local library. So, Erica, thank you so much. Have a wonderful night, and for everybody else here, happy reading. I hope you have a great evening as well.